Here we go. We have our first set of college football playoff rankings back here with CBS Sports college football insider Richard Johnson. Let's welcome in former Ohio State standout Beanie Wells and former Alabama standout A.J. McCarron, the first quarterback in the BCS era to win back-to-back national championships. Ohio State looking to run it back. I had to work that in there, Beanie. All right, top four seeds. Here we go. It's Ohio State, Indiana, Texas A&M, and Alabama. A.J., are you surprised with the top four seeds here?
No, not at all. I thought Ohio State and Indiana have both been ranked up there all year. You got to put them in those spots. A&M and the SEC, strength of schedule, their record, it speaks for itself. And then Alabama, I think, is the hottest team in college football right now. Just from strength of schedule, the opponents they've played on a consecutive week-to-week basis, it makes sense for them to be in the top four.
You have any problem with the top four, Richard?
No, I think the top four shakes out as I thought. I went through this exercise ranking on Sunday for CBSSports.com, and, maybe I think Indiana a little bit better than Ohio State, I don't know, but you couldn't parse the resumes, right? When you stack the resumes with it, yes, Ohio State's resume does take it slightly above Indiana when you go and do it. And I agree with AJ on the Alabama point. They are not the team that lost to Florida State. I understand it is a result that happens, and I understand that is how you parse them versus Texas A&M, but I agree with AJ when he says Alabama's the hottest team in the country right now.
Yeah, they have four ranked wins. I mean, they have four ranked wins, which is more than anybody in FBS. Beanie, when you look at it, you could have made an argument that Alabama should be number one in the college football rankings when you talk about record strength and all of the metrics now that they are evaluating. But I still believe the committee values a 0 in the loss column, which is why they went Ohio State, Indiana, Texas A&M. What's your reaction to the top four?
I agree with it 100%. I think Ohio State and Indiana, those are the two teams that you could sit there and split hairs with. But when we talk about Alabama, they are one of the best, most improved teams in college football this season. But they do indeed have one of the worst losses now, especially when you look at how Florida State has played. So I think taking that into consideration, they're placed right where they should be. Texas A&M, another dominant football team, them playing in the SEC and them dominating the competition, I think certainly matters. I really love how the committee evaluated these teams and came together with their bracket. This is one of the unique years where I don't have a problem with it whatsoever.
Yeah, top four look pretty good right now. Richard, what are you thinking about the top four and how they played out so far in this first reveal?
Well, I think it's interesting with Texas A&M, though. Of these four, Texas A&M, although undefeated, especially with the SEC teams are concerned, Texas A&M's strength of schedule is a little, now it's undefeated. And your point about having a 0 in the loss column is massive, and that is helping A&M as well it should. But if they are to take a loss coming home, I'm very interested in where they would shake out because their strength of schedule, it's going to be in the teens. It's not going to be the strength of schedule that an Alabama has, for instance.
Yeah, and let's talk about their schedule. They have Missouri coming up on the road, which is always a tough place to play. And then they've got Texas to end the regular season. So this could look a lot different come 4 weeks here when we have another release.
Yeah, they're playing great ball right now, obviously, but Texas looks like they are starting to figure some things out. They're going to go to Austin Black Friday night, and it's going to be a powder keg.
Texas is 11th in the latest college football rankings, the first of the year. AJ, what have you seen from Texas? Is this a team you believe that will be ending up in the field when all is said and done?
No. Listen, I think they lose to A&M last game of the year. I think that third loss knocks them out. Would I love to see another SEC school in there? Yes, but I think one of the other 10-2 teams that the SEC will fill in that spot. The best thing that this committee has done compared to other years, and the biggest thing I was looking for is where did they have Ole Miss ranked compared to BYU and Notre Dame? It was the SEC and Greg Sankey adding this 9th in-conference game and going back and forth with the committee all off season, and ESPN throwing out money and saying, hey, 50 to 80 million for a 9th in-conference game. And Greg Sankey fighting it at the beginning saying, okay, well, if you want a 9th in-conference game, we want the metric of strength of schedule actually thought of and put into the thought process of coming out with these rankings. And I think by having Ole Miss ranked 6, shows that the committee is finally bought into and is full on committed to the strength of schedule. And that's awesome to see.
Yeah, they sit obviously right behind Georgia right there. Okay, you defer to Georgia as the team that beat them. But yes, Ole Miss with good wins against Oklahoma, for instance, sits there. And I think they're right about where they should be as well. We'll see if they can keep it. Last year, remember, Ole Miss looked pretty good, and then they clunked the way home. I think this Ole Miss team is a little bit more solidly built, but we saw last year that you can't just write them in. That Egg Bowl is always a funky game, no matter how good the teams are. Mississippi State, Jeff Levy's Bulldogs would love nothing more than to spoil the party for Ole Miss Thanksgiving weekend.
What does it tell you about this first set of rankings that Texas Tech and BYU are in the first set, and they, oh, by the way, happen to play this Saturday?
Yeah, well, obviously, I think we'll decide kind of the Big 12 team that gets to stay in the party after this weekend. I was a little surprised that BYU is as high as they are. Now,
Undefeated, though.
I understand undefeated, so they're going to be ahead of Texas Tech, but it is a little curious. And also, obviously, Texas Tech with a weird loss. I don't even know if you call it a bad loss against Arizona State, but it is a very weird loss to have. And, you're probably able to get over that if they are able to get over the hump and they're able to beat BYU. But I mean that because I think BYU's been getting away with it a lot this season. And we'll see when the rubber meets the road against Texas Tech this weekend if they will continue to.
Beanie, what are some other things that jump out to you here on this first set of rankings?
I think the team that I was more curious to see where they were ranked was Notre Dame, and Notre Dame sitting right there at that 10th spot. I find it fitting, and I'm glad the committee didn't penalize them for having 2 losses, considering how they did indeed lose the Texas A&M game. I thought that was a game that really could have went either way, and if it wasn't for human error, we're looking at that situation being a win for Notre Dame and them being a 1-loss team. So, kudos to the committee for getting that one right, but also BYU. I'm really curious their thought process on BYU throughout the way. It's clear that they believe they're one of the best teams in the country because they are undefeated. But like Richard just said, they have been playing it kind of close to the vest. And we saw last season BYU late in the year, they got to about 9-0, and that's where the wheels came falling off that football team. But they are built a little bit different with freshman quarterback and Bear Bachmeier and LJ Martin. So it's going to be interesting to see how this game does indeed pan out this coming weekend.
Do you think it will be an eliminator, this game on Saturday?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I think so.
You think it will be? Do you think the Big 12 ends up getting 2 teams in at the end of the day?
Yeah, I think because if Texas Tech can win this game and then win out, I mean, they may play BYU again,
right?
In the Big 12 championship game. But I do think this is an elimination game because I don't know if Texas Tech can get in with 2 losses. Then again, obviously, if Texas Tech ends up being the Big 12 champion, they'll find a way, and then it could be a 2-way.
Well, and we could very well have the Big 10 champion, right, with 1 loss, right? Like, if Indiana and Ohio State, they're on a collision course right now, we could very well have a situation there. Both teams are in with a loss. That wouldn't be a big deal, but then we figure out where they're going to be ranked, because if you look at Alabama, if they run the table rest of way, then we're going to have some interesting questions to answer in the coming weeks. Right now, we're answering the initial questions. AJ, what else sticks out to you about these initial rankings here?
Well, I mean, the biggest thing for me is seeing where they have the Big 12 schools. Because, listen, people are going to say it's biased, but I think if you go off a strength of schedule, a 10-2 SEC school, take a Vandy, Texas, a school like that where a 1-loss BYU, I think a 2-loss SEC, just based off of strength of schedule, gets the bump, and you add a 5th or possibly 6th SEC school to this thing. Listen, it usually tries to balance itself out, right, with the Big 10 and the SEC. The Big 10's down this year more than it's been in the past probably 10 years from a sense of just their top teams. No Michigan, no Penn State. Listen, Oregon is not promising this thing either. They got a tough one this weekend. So, I mean, you could possibly only have 2, most likely 3 Big 10 schools in this thing. I think that opens the door for another SEC school to be in this, because I don't believe the committee takes a two teams from the Big 12. I just don't see it.
The SEC should absolutely be in drive for 5 mode, so to speak, here when we get down to it the first weekend of December. I think if it keeps tracking like this, honestly, you're going to have bye week deciders in both the conference championship games if the top 4 stay like this. I also look a little bit further down the rankings. I look at number 20, Iowa. That's going to be really interesting if Oregon can get over that hump this weekend. That's going to boost Oregon and give Oregon a lift, I think, in next week's rankings. But that game is not a given. AJ just told you, by the way, this Iowa team gave Indiana everything they wanted down to the fourth quarter in that game. Oregon better watch out. They can lose that game.
Yeah, and that game you can see on CBS and streaming live on Paramount Plus. Oregon on the road in Iowa City, a ranked on ranked, which will be huge for Oregon if they can go in and win. That's going to be a strength on strength game, as well as Iowa's one of the best in not allowing points, and Oregon's the best at scoring points. So we'll see how that shakes out. Certainly will have implications on the college football playoff. Much more ahead here on CBS Sports HQ with our crew breaking down the field. The projected field, the top 12 are in. Who's going to win it all? We continue to discuss. Keep it locked. You're watching CBS Sports HQ.